Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Lindsay.
We have been friends since high school and are both teachers and moms now. This podcast is a place to share weird stories, ask strange questions, and maybe get to the bottom of some of life's most bizarre mysteries.
But probably not.
Right. This is not an educational podcast unless you educate us.
All right, so there's been some things haunting me since our last podcast.
Haunting you?
Totally haunting me. Not super scary haunting, but I did remember the name of that resort in Dirty Dancing. And I'm shamed that I did not remember it immediately. It is the Catskills.
Nice.
Somewhere on the East Coast.
The Catskills is the place, but that's not the name of the resort. Did they ever give the name of the resort in Dirty Dancing?
Yes, I thought that was it.
Is the Catskills in the Catskills? Come to the Catskills.
Is the Catskills a place, like a geographical place?
I think so. Google it.
Oh, it's Kellerman's. Kellerman's Mountain House. Remember Kellerman, the guy with like the little slick little blazer?
Kellerman's. Maybe it's still in the Catskills. I don't know where the Catskills.
It says, which was set in the Catskills of New York in the 1960s. Well, There it is, ladies and gentlemen. I was still wrong. Catskills. Kellerman's. How could I not remember that?
I don't know, but thank you, Google.
Thank you, Patrick Swayze.
Thank you, Patrick Swayze.
All right, so that's been haunting me. The other thing that I have been thinking a lot about is after my daughter listened to our podcast last week about Sam the Sandown Clown, and she said, Mom, did you know Sam the Sandown, I can't even say it. Sam the Sandown Clown.
All Color Sam. You can call him All Color Sam.
Is super well known, and people have tattoos. And you said there's a statue?
Yes, the town of Sandown recently put up a statue.
What?
Of All Color Sam. It's awesome. I put some pictures of it on our Facebook, and I even found like cool stuff that people had made on Etsy or whatever. I don't know. I was just
that is
I shared some
fascinating.
Neat stuff. Yeah.
How have we gotten to be this old and not heard about Sam the Sandown?
Well, I had heard of it.
You had like years ago?
It's one of my favorite stories. I don't know
what?
I don't remember where I heard it, but I've known it for years.
Oh my gosh!
Haven't had a chance to tell you until we made a podcast.
Oh my gosh! For the record, you don't have to wait for the podcast to tell me fun things. All right, back to our notes. This episode is going to be weird. We're going to talk about something that you and I both grew up hearing about: Ramtha.
Ramptha. I'm super excited because she is fascinating.
So we grew up near where she has her compound. She being Jay-Z Knight. Judith Zebra Knight.
I did not know her middle name was Zebra.
Neither did I until I decided to take a deep dive and learn a little bit more about our neighbor. I grew up, and this is all I knew. Jay-Z Knight, she's a lady, maybe kind of like a cult leader, and she has this huge mansion in Yelm, Washington, where even some famous people come and listen to her channel this 4,000, what I was told at the time, a 4,000-year-old warrior from the lost city of Atlantis named Ramtha. That's what I remember. And I've driven past the gates millions of times. Oh, and they also told me, my mom said that they had white carpets in the Arabian horse stables because
that's a terrible idea. That's a terrible idea.
Right? I'm no interior designer, but that seems a little risky.
Judith, Zebra is a Judith.
And this was before OxyClean or Magic Eraser. There's no getting that out.
Wow, that's a choice.
Yeah, but then they used that space, come to find out, they used it as a gathering space more than they did for horses.
Okay.
Like where she would present herself as Ramtha, or Ramtha would present himself through her.
I hope they cleaned it first because horses are messy.
Right. So I don't know if the horses ever were really in there or what the deal is. So my source is a Seattle Met article by Allison Williams, and then a website for the Southern Poverty Law Center. Interestingly enough, they had a whole intelligence report about the history of Jay-Z Knight with Ramtha.
Odd.
And then there's a podcast called Unbelievable, and I just discovered it when I searched for podcasts about her. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Should we talk first about what channeling is? What do you think it is?
I've definitely come across a few channelers. All of them claim to channel another being. So either someone like an alien from another planet or an intelligence from the future, or right, it's someone else.
Yeah.
And they claim that they can kind of tap into their intelligence, and that entity communicates through the human person. But there's two types I've heard of. There's the one where the person uses like a weird voice,
Like a possession.
Yeah, like a possession, and they're like, in the future, all the animals will go extinct.
Right, like they're taking on a literal other character.
Yeah, and I always find that super kooky, and I don't know that I trust that one. But on the other hand, then there's people who channel. There's a guy named Bashar who I'm currently really fascinated with. He claims to channel this really intelligent entity, either from the future or from another planet, and he just talks basically in his normal voice. It only changes a little bit.
What does he do? Who is it? Who's channeling Bashar?
Bashar
is the man?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, the man, and I forgot his name, but he's channeling an entity named Bashar.
Got it. Entity is the word that they always use, is another being of some kind.
Yeah, and
entity.
Bashar, it's almost like preaching, I guess, right? He channels this information, but it's supposed to be for the good of humanity. And when I listen to him, he's talking about like loving each other and answers to the universe and all our biggest questions. But he claims to have them, but they're all pretty tame and kind and loving. So I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I listened to this podcast called Unbelievable. They mentioned a woman who I want to listen to. Her name is Karen Tallcat. These people on Unbelievable debunk things and kind of pull apart the fallacies of some things in the paranormal universe. And two of them said something to the effect of, well, she's the only real one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I thought that was interesting. That made me curious. I want to kind of see more about that. So as I understand it, channeling is, like you said, a spiritual being or something extra dimensional that inhabits their body, speaks through them.
Yeah.
As like a possession. And that's definitely the case in Jay-Z Knight's life.
Yes.
So, according to legend, in 1977, Ramtha appeared to this woman, Jay-Z Knight, in her Lakewood, Washington kitchen at 2:30 in the afternoon.
Okay.
She's a mom of two. She said he stood 7 feet tall, clad in a robe of purple and white and pure light.
Oh.
Yep. This guy, this Ramtha character, supposedly then begins entering her body and speaking through her with a different voice, a different accent.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did she invite him in? Because you know how in previous podcasts we've talked about inviting things?
Right.
Or did he just jump inside her?
I'm not entirely sure what the conversation at that kitchen table was that day, but I think it probably was a slow burn. Of like visiting, having some conversations, and he started appearing to her. She would actually see him outside of herself as another being. I think it started that way.
Multiple times before he took over?
Yeah, a few casual dates. I'm not sure when. Is it the third date that you can inhabit someone's body as an entity and speak through them?
I need to know the rules.
At least 5. Anyway, this happens. She is like, I'm down for that. He speaks with her voice, but in his way. And his whole mission is to dispense mystical wisdom to students, to people, to other human beings on Earth. She has the RSE, Ramtha's School of Enlightenment in Yale, Washington, which is the compound that we've seen. And you can't get into it. It's totally ringed with low walls, iron gates, the whole
Oh, it's a whole deal.
shebang.
So my dad used to drive me out there. My dad really likes strange things, just like I do. And we would take a lot of road trips on weekends, like local road trips. So we'd go to Yelm, and we would there's nothing at that time, there was nothing in Yelm other than this compound. And we would drive all the way out there just to kind of drive around the walls and the gate, because it was it's like nothing that I'd ever seen.
No. It's like our version of, it was the closest we'd come to a castle.
Yeah.
Kind of huge stone wall, and it goes on for a long time. Really changed the dynamics of this little tiny farm town in Western Washington. When she was at her highest point, I mean, because she was working with Hollywood celebrities like Linda Evans and Shirley MacLaine, who we talked about in another episode about astral projection. She would make like $200,000 for an appearance.
Wow.
And then she had a school, so then you would pay for like $250 for a session, or $400 for a session, or an experience of some kind.
Yeah.
And she writes books, and She appeared on talk shows and this and that, which I'll tell you a little
All
bit
of
in a
these
minute.
things I feel like we need to unpack. This is like, you just covered a whole bunch of things.
I know.
Bang, bang, bang. So my dad told me that Ramtha, when he would come out on stage, would stand like Yul Brynner in The King and I. You know, he stands with like
His hands on his fists on his
legs,
hips.
yeah, his legs spread out, fists on his hips, head held high, like high status, high.
It's strange.
I guess that's how a warrior from 7,000 years ago would stand.
It's 35,000 years ago. I forgot to mention that.
35,000
So
years
I
ago.
would remember being told over and over 4,000 years ago. 35,000 years ago is what she says. And he wasn't from the lost city of Atlantis. What he says on the Merv Griffin show is that he's a pilgrim from, I think it's Lotharia.
Is he a pilgrim or a warrior?
Both.
You can be both.
Well, pilgrim just means like you've traveled. Like
What do I know about-
you've moseyed about
All right.
the universe.
I need to learn more about
So-
35,000 years ago. What life was like.
This Ramptha character went to Atlantis, pilgrimaged there. Is that a verb?
Oh.
Went there, but was not from there.
I get it. I lived in Las Vegas for 8 years, so I could say
Sure.
I'm from Vegas or I'm from Washington.
You made a pilgrimage.
Yeah.
This whole thing, like people studied her, people interviewed her. She was on the 2020 episode, Barbara Walters, like so much research and study. She was huge. Everybody was talking about this woman and what she was doing. I am going to play for you her Merv Griffin interview.
That which is termed as it were indeed God, which has been misunderstood, which have been taught to live outside of your being, is within your being. And that which is called Christ is within your being. And that which is called life is the grand experience that it is where the kingdom of heaven is located entity. We know you that which is termed you are God, that which emanates within you is divine. You will find joy. I do not want to deliver a message. I am that which I am. That is it why indeed which they are who listens. That which is the Christ within, it comes forward. You have lived 7.5 million years in search of paradise. It has always been within you, never outside of you.
That was wild.
Right?
So people listening to our podcast, they didn't get to see what I saw because I saw it on
tell
screen.
us, what did you see?
Well, she did stand up like Yul Brynner. For a
Totally
minute.
did.
That was great.
Wearing long, like kind of golden taupe tan robes and
Right.
chin up. She has a very Ramptha, presented as Ramptha, has a very haughty
Chin. She touches
Yeah.
her chin a lot. Yeah, she's very King and I, but I don't know. It's so cool. It's just so.
I think
over
the way
top
that
to
they
me.
talk is ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay,
And then-
35,000 years ago, what kind of language did they
It
have?
is
How did
that which is indeed that you are entity, which is what we're come from, that there is there. It's a lot of prepositions. It's too many prepositional words and phrases and a lot of just nothing.
I think the nothing, the prepositions and stuff, I think
Is it
she's
just filler?
It's filler.
She's
I
coming
think-
up with stuff
yeah,
to say?
I think she's trying to think of what to say next. It feels like an act.
It
but
feels very contrived.
this
to
is a
me.
long
Very.
game, though. Because, like,
Right?
I've done shows. You've done shows where you play a character for a little bit. But this is a character for a lifetime.
But it's paying the bills
Yeah.
a lot. I mean, and then some. Like she has a spa and a sauna and a pool and a gajillion things in this huge estate. 9 fireplaces or 9 bathrooms, 6 fireplaces, something like that. It's just wild. And of course, that's a lot you have to pay for. You got to keep that machine churning. But she retired from being Ramptha several years ago, I guess.
Well, I wonder what that conversation was like with Rantha
Yeah,
at the
peace
kitchen
out,
table.
dude.
Like, I got to retire.
And supposedly she's not passing him on to anybody else. He's not going anywhere else, supposedly. She copyrighted Ramptha.
Copyrighted.
Like, because somebody else somewhere in the world said they were channeling Ramptha, and she sued them and won.
Come on.
I know. If it's legit, right?
I don't know
Why
if-
wouldn't Ramptha appear to someone else if he's a real deal?
If he's a real entity from 35,000 years ago who can take over people's bodies, why is hers
Why are you the holy chosen
the
one?
only one? Yeah.
So, but because it's her business, I think the court probably saw it as like a branding, right? And so she got to keep it as her own. And yeah, trademark, Ramptha, trademark. So
Can we even talk about him? Is she?
yeah, we can. I mean, for educational purposes only, non-profit making. That which is not profit-making entity, we can talk about her. Yeah. So I think the money's in cults.
I have an idea. We could tap into this and put on a show, and then channel all the money to books for kids for the schools.
I can't even teach the same lesson in the same way twice. There's no way. I get bored. My audience is different. I'm in a different mood. I want to talk about something. I've learned something between yesterday's group and today's group. If I'm teaching the same thing, but it's going to be in a different way every time, there's no way let's see, she started doing this in 1977. She's 78 now. She just retired a few years ago. She writes books, I guess, or has been writing books in her retirement to keep it going. She has some published books. I could not keep up the act. If it's an act, there's no way.
There's no way.
I'd be so bored.
I would be embarrassed if I just feel like the way that she acted on Merv Griffin
It was embarrassing
and
to me,
moved
too.
and
Cringy.
talked.
Very cringy.
Cringy, yeah.
It's weird. It's weird, but so many thousands and thousands of people bought it.
Well, I'm going to feel bad if I pass away and find out that this is like the real deal.
Right. But I sort of feel that way about everything. I think you and I are super open-minded. Not everybody. I'm not just believing everybody who says they can do something. But there are some that I'm like, this is unexplainable. This feels legitimate, and I can't prove that it's not. This, for me, meaning Jay-Z Knight as Ramptha, has so many holes in it and has so many red flags. I cannot understand how so many people bought it.
It'd be interesting
Hook,
to
line,
talk to
and
some of
sinker.
them. Yeah, like, what do you get out of this?
First of all, saying, I don't really have a message. I am that what I am, or whatever he says. Well, that's kind of a cop-out. But you think you'd be ready to answer the question, what's your greatest message?
I would think if you've been doing this for 20 years,
It
you'd
was
have time to
super
plan
lame.
something.
Lame answer. I would never buy it. There's no way. If I had seen that, I would have been like, oh my God.
I would not cast her in any production that I'm putting on. I don't think I'd be
Unless
like,
it says The King and I.
The King and I, maybe. Maybe I'd consider that.
Man. So my mom taught there at the high school. She had Jay-Z's son, Christopher, in her class. And she's the one who told me the rumors of the white carpet and the chandeliers in the horse stables. Jay-Z has 2 kids, 2 sons. Can you imagine being the kid of someone who's it becomes their entire job?
It's probably an ace. Your mom taught Jay-Z's son, but she had 2 kids. Well, first I want to know.
I don't know where the other one is. I don't even know what his name is.
I hope he's okay.
Yeah.
But I was just going to ask. I want to know what their middle names are. If her middle name's Zebra.
Zebra's a nickname. So supposedly the legend is, what the story she tells is that, well, this part probably isn't legend. She grew up poor. She grew up a child of abuse, unfortunately, at the hands of several men. And she also grew up with a charismatic evangelical Christian sort of household and upbringing. So she was seeing people have demonic possessions in church and things like that and be exorcised. And
Oh, wow. She's got a whole history she's bringing in.
Yeah. So there's a religious history there in her childhood, for sure. And then she had been convinced by a boyfriend, a significant other at the time, who I guess was fairly controlling according to her story, to dye her hair. She has blonde hair, but to dye it really dark. And so she did. And then when it started growing back in blonde, it was like zebra stripes.
Oh, okay.
And so then someone started calling her Zebra. It stuck. And it's Jay-Z, no periods, Knight.
Okay. And then you talked about what's it like to grow up as her kids.
I can't even
That's
imagine.
I feel like that's a whole topic. We have this term in our industry, ACEs, for adverse childhood experiences. So I wonder if just growing up in this cult, if we're going to call it a cult, counts as an ACE for the kids. But now it sounds like Jay-Z had a lot of
definitely
ACEs.
had some. And I don't think she ever thrust them at anything I read. She didn't thrust them into the limelight or the spotlight for it at all. She was married a few times.
I wonder what her husbands thought about all this. I mean, I'm sure they enjoyed the pools and the money, but I wonder if they were true believers or...
It's like you want your partner to have hobbies. You want your partner...
You want to support your partner.
Yeah.
But when your partner's
where's the
Jay-Z
line? I'd just be like, I'll be out with the horses. You do you, boo.
The fact that she didn't put her kids on public display to get to, to make more
They
money.
went to
off
public
of them.
high school.
And they went to public high schools. I just feel like a lot of people who are in the spotlight often put their kids in the spotlight. So if she's not doing that.
Yeah, they treat them like a commodity.
Yeah.
But also, maybe she's just super self-centered.
Oh, and she wants all the attention for herself. And she won't even share it with her
Who
kids.
knows what the motivation is on that? Who knows what kind of relationship she had or has with her kids? And I don't think she ever thrust them, at anything I read, she didn't thrust them into the limelight or the spotlight for it at all. And she, for sure, referred to the word cult as a 4-letter word, that she denies it being a cult. There's people who believe it was. There's people who say it wasn't because of different, qualifying features of a cult.
Uh-huh.
In some cases, it might raise some red flags, but by some of the pure defining characteristics of a cult, it doesn't.
What cult leader calls their cult a cult? Who's going to admit to it?
Hey, come on down. We got the next best cult on the market.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
See
right.
it on all the marketing, Facebook. This cult is for
Fair
you.
Fair point.
Yeah. So I think, of course, she's going to say it's not a cult, right?
Yeah. Or I think if I were starting a cult.
Tell me about that. Tell me about your cult.
I might say something like, I understand why people would say that it's a cult because I do have a lot of followers and it's not really me, it's Ramptha. I don't take any credit for that. And I have a lot of followers because of his positive messages and it inspires them for whatever reason. P.S. Not all of his messages are positive, but we'll get to that in a second.
Ooh.
And they are free to come and go. They don't live on my estate. They might live in town because then it's sort of more like a church.
I guess, but she's telling them how to live, right? I mean...
Not really. In fact, that's kind of the crux of the whole message is whatever you're doing, however you're doing it, is right. God is within all of us. Mm-hmm. You are your own universe. Manifest your own destiny. All of these things are in you. That's sort of her jive is really there is no right answer, but there's no wrong answer either, which is a brilliant business model.
You made me think of Aleister Crowley, who's... like a pagan. Actually, I don't know if that's the right word. That might be something that haunts me later. But he was a guy who had his own following of mystic, magical.
The name sounds familiar.
Yes, Aleister Crowley. He had this message for people that was, "Do as thou wilt. That is the whole of the law." So he had all these.
Do whatever you want. That's the only law you got to live by.
Yeah.
Kind of excusing away things that you might
all accountability.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, because humans apply meaning to things that we do, not that anything is actually wrong or right to do. Isn't that weird? That's weird.
Well, it's dangerous. It's dangerous.
Super dangerous. And also, again, brilliant business model. She would make about $200,000 for an appearance. An appearance would mean she would come out, introduce herself as Jay-Z, go off stage, change clothes, change hair, come back in and do a home kind of moment. And then poof, he's in.
What a show.
And hours later, he would just spew messaging.
Yeah.
One night in particular, she got banana nuts, or Ramtha got banana nuts, and they had a drinking game. Red wine was kind of a thing that was...
Ooh, careful. It's like Kool-Aid.
Yeah, well, it was a thing that was available a lot at these meetings and presentations. And one night, I guess there was, maybe it was more than one night, but one night it was recorded and then published. Ramtha, they say the most heinous, racist, awful things. And she does not want that out there at all.
Not.
She sued people for it. But she was there in the room. I mean, how convenient to be it wasn't me, it was Ramtha. Okay.
There's no accountability.
Right. Here's an interesting piece that I think you're going to like. There was a guy named Stanley Krippner who was a parapsychology researcher.
That's my dream job, by the way. I don't know when I'll do it. I'll have to retire because I'm really into servicing the community, but...
Well, there's a huge need for parapsychologists.
There's a huge need for teachers.
Massive gap in our entire social system.
I really do want to do it, though.
So this guy, Krippner, was studying states of consciousness and hypnosis. Mm-hmm. So in 1996, he got to study Jay-Z Knight during her channeling sessions.
Ooh.
Yeah, so he did a bunch of psychological tests to measure, does she disassociate in her brain? Or is this her putting on an act? or what's the deal?
Ooh, have they ever done like brain scans
That's what
while
he was
she's
doing.
channeling? Okay.
It was tough because they put electrodes all over her skin to measure her skin temperature, her muscle tension, like the way her muscles were moving, and her brain waves as she began to speak as Ramtha. But the brainwaves thing didn't really work because she moved around too much as the warrior spirit.
Oh, it's not a controlled experiment.
It wasn't a sleep study. They will tie you down and lasso those little electrodes all over you. But he did see notable changes in the skin and muscle tests. And quote, he said, "This was something we don't think can be faked. It indicated that she was going into some altered state of consciousness."
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So he saw proof of the supernatural from Knight's own body.
But is it that she's channeling something from 35,000 years ago, or is it that she's getting herself into another state of consciousness, which we know we can do, right? You can go into a meditative state.
On every Disney ride. I have to.
I definitely have to on Splash Mountain. That ride makes me sick.
Anytime you see those pictures where it's like taken at the height, the scariest part, the most thrilling part of the ride, and everybody's like, ah, they have that scream face.
Yeah.
And they're clinging on for dear life. Every single picture, because I will not miss out on a ride. I have massive motion sickness.
Yeah.
But equally as powerful as FOMO.
Okay.
I don't want to miss out. I'm not going to be standing down there holding my little Mickey-shaped ice cream cone watching everybody do the rides without me. So I go, but I have to completely dissociate. I go to a happy place in my brain. I zen out. I just close my eyes, try to stay relaxed. I just take really deep breaths. And so in every single one of those pictures, people are screaming their heads off, and I look like I'm asleep standing up.
Okay, well,
sitting up.
here's my challenge for you. Next time you go on a ride and you go into that dissociative state,
See if I can channel Ramptha.
yeah, see if you can invite something in. This is a fascinating
I know,
experiment,
and
though.
it
I really
goes-
like
it's-
experiments.
My question is, why do so many people want to believe in things like this? And the only thing I can think of, like with any religion or philosophy on life that you follow that changes your daily habits, that changes the way you do things and why you do things the way you do, human beings who are small and simple and have a very short time on this planet to connect to something bigger. I think it's innate in most people, not all, to want to believe that this can't possibly be it.
For sure.
You know, the universe is so massive, and yet our little tiny lives on this little tiny planet are so small comparatively. There has to be more.
For sure. We want to know our purpose, why we're here,
Right.
where we go next.
And some would argue there isn't one. Like, this is it. Like, just do what you can to be awesome while you're here, and then you die. You're
Or don't.
So I think that's kind of the innate desire or sort of craving that a lot of people have.
For sure.
And then if you just happen to stumble upon it one day, whether it's because you've seen them on the show or read a book or heard it on the radio or whatever, or a friend of a friend tells you, then you can get hooked.
I just can't imagine. I get embarrassed when I wear a coat that doesn't fit right.
This is a whole persona that doesn't fit right.
I cannot imagine going out in public like that.
Like, I kind of want us, at some point, it would be such a funny party game to, like, have everybody come up with a character that you're going to, quote unquote, channel. Like, it's the channeling game.
Okay.
And everybody has to, like, go into their separate room of the house, get into character somehow, whether you brought a costume or you just change something about your appearance,
Yeah.
the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you've groomed yourself or whatever. And then y'all come back out to the party as the person this character that you've channeled. That would be hilarious.
It's amazing. You should sell this. This should be on the shelves at Target. It's a great game idea.
But that's our little hometown cult / spiritual leader, and Jay-Z Knight. Jay-Z, Judith, Zebra, Knight.
I don't know. I just don't know.
I don't know. But she still lives there, apparently.
The compound's still there. I drove by it a while ago.
It's huge. It's so big. It's weird in the tiny little town.
And you can take a class if...
Yeah. So that's it. That's Jay-Z Knight in a nutshell.
That was great, Lindsay. Thank you.
Heavy on nut.
I learned a lot.
I did too. It made me tired. It made me tired just thinking about how exhausted I would be trying to keep that up.
My dad told me one more thing about her that you haven't covered yet.
What?
Well, apparently they've dug tunnels underneath the whole town of Yelm, so they have places to escape to when the lizard people come.
No.
Yes. Well, that's
That's
a
not
rumor.
real.
Well, then you need to tell my dad because he
Listen.
says
Who's building that?
It's the people who come and stay for a week. Guess what you're doing? Welcome to Ramtha's what am I saying? Welcome.
Palace of Spiritual Enlightenment.
Grab a shovel. So if you live in Yelm,
do you have sinkholes?
Yeah, do you have sinkholes? Do you hear things under the ground? Do you want to dig and see if you can find a tunnel? Because we need to know.
Why don't you tell us about our social media?
All right. Well, we are a new podcast, and we would love to hear from you. Drop us a message at theparanormalclassroom@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Paranormal Classroom.
Tell us, what should we research next? What do you know that we don't? Fill us in, or if there's something you're curious about and you just haven't had the time or inkling to research it yourself, tell us.
Class dismissed.
And don't open the door.